Hello there, my name is Jason Schmaltz and I'm an AMGA single pitch instructor, and today I'm going to show you how to place cams when you're trad climbing. The cams are the most universally used piece of protection when you're trad climbing. Other pieces of protection you might use are nuts or tri-cams or something like that. But these are the most universally used both within North America but then also around the world. There's a couple different components to them. The main component that you'll probably notice right off the bat is the lobes. You can see there's 4 lobes and they act kind of in unison in order to extend to the rock face. The goal is to get the lobes to place symmetrically like that so that the force is even between all 4 of them. Another thing you also want to try to do is focus on this angle when you're placing, and you want that to be kind of in the 90-degree plus or minus range. If you get the angle too small like this or non-existent, that would be an overcam, would not be good. You might not get your piece of equipment back. And on the other side of the spectrum, a obtuse angle or almost open angle, the cam is not able to fully engage and could just slip right out. The second part of the cam is the trigger, and that's what you use to engage the cam when you place it in, and then also to release when you pull it out. The last part of the cam is the sling, and this is what you'll use to connect to the climbing rope. You may also extend it with an alpine draw like that, and then of course you could fully extend this alpine draw if you wanted in order to prevent rope drag or to insulate the cam from the rope movement and prevent walking, which we'll look at in a minute. There's a scoring system for placing cams that I want to share with you. A lot of people have talked about the 1 to 5 point system, but it's always sounded somewhat objective in some of the videos I've watched. So I'll try to put some objectivity to it. 2 of the 5 points have to do with the rock, and 3 of the 5 points have to do with the actual placement. So let's start with the rock. The first part is the rock quality. So you want to look at the rock and see, is it dirty? Does it sound hollow when I bang on it? Or if I kick it, do I feel it moving or something like that? Or is it friable? Like if I rub my hand on it, is it kind of like rotting away? So that's all things on rock quality that if any of those were raising some red flags, you would not get a point. But if the rock's solid, that's 1 point. The second part about the rock is the crack that you're placing in. Is it deep or not? One reason a cam may fail is that the force is so hard on it that it could break the rock. So if you have a deep crack, even if the rock does break, the cam has to travel through a large distance before it's free of the rock, so you have a better chance of that not impacting your fall. So if the crack is deep, you get a point. If the crack is shallow, sometimes that's still okay for a placement, but you just wouldn't get a point for that. Okay, it would be less ideal. And then the other 3 points have to do with placement. So the first thing is kind of like we talked about, is that placement such that you have that symmetrical load on the cam and that angle is what you want, you know, that 90-degree plus or minus sweet spot of the cam. So if that's good, you will get a point. If it's a little bit off, you know, if it kind of looks like this, you see those are not symmetrical, that would not be a point. Not necessarily a horrible placement, but you know, you wouldn't get a point for that. Obviously, on an extreme end like that, that wouldn't even be a correct placement at all. So forget about the point system, you shouldn't place there. But some minor off, you know, symmetrical things is what I'm trying to highlight with the points. And then the last point you'll get is based on the size of the cam. So a bigger cam offers more forgiveness, also offers more strength. So a cam that's placed that's a green 0.75 or higher is going to get a point. A cam that is purple or 0.5 or lower is going to get, or will not get a point. And so you can see the reason for that is there's just less travel distance on these small cams than the big ones. So if they're moved around at all, then you could lose the placement. Okay, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. Hey, what's up? I forgot. The fifth point is direction of fall. So what that means is when you place the cam, if the direction that you would fall would pull the cam straight out, you would get a point for that. If you place the cam in maybe like a horizontal position, in like a vertical crack in a horizontal position where it would pull down on a fall and cause the cam to maybe like pivot, you would not get a point for that. That would be an example where you didn't meet the criteria. Sorry, I forgot to say that in the video, but I saw it in editing and I don't want to go back to the crag right now because it's dark outside. Okay, back to the video. It should be noted that just because you don't get a 5 on a placement doesn't mean it's bad. I want you to understand anything from a 3 to a 5 is actually pretty good. So a 5 is like bombshell, you know, I can hang a car on it. A 4 is also really, really good. I can't think of a fall that I wouldn't take on a 4-point placement. A 3 placement is still pretty good. I would take most falls on a 3 and trust it. Maybe a huge whipper, maybe not. But, you know, even 10, 15 feet above the placement, I would feel confident. A 2-point placement, I would only trust that to protect me maybe for a couple moves, which that has its place. Okay, so if you have a little crux part and then a bolt right above it, placing a 2 placement wouldn't be a bad idea just to protect the couple moves you have to make before you get to your bomber placement. And then a 1 is really just for a mental, you know, just for your mental capacity to be able to progress in the climb and at least think you're protected, but not really. I'm not saying a 1 placement doesn't have its place in your climbing journey. If it clears your head to focus on movement, that's not a bad thing. But understand that when you're placing a 1, it's just for up here. It's probably not for a practical fall. So let's take a look at some examples now and score them together and see what you think. So I got a nice horizontal crack here that I can fit a 0.5 in, nice and deep. And you can see that the lobes are pretty symmetrical. The direction of fall is in line with how the cam would be loaded. The rock quality is good, the crack is deep. Really the only thing lacking is it's a small cam. But this is a really good placement and I would rate it probably a 4 on the point system that we use, and I would feel super confident climbing above this. So here's a little bit different geometry crack, a little different geometry horizontal crack. It's a little bit shallower. So let's place here and see what it turns out to be. So the right placement for this crack is a number 3. And it always feels good to place a number 3 in a crack because it's a nice big cam that can absorb a lot of force, and you can see that it's very symmetrically placed. I can actually push it back just a little bit and get it really good. You can see a lot of great surface area. Rock quality is good, nice clean rock. Only thing bad about this placement is it's a short or a shallow crack, but you can see it's got this concave geometry to it. So even though it's short, it has to be pulled through kind of a bottleneck in order to break through the crack. So that gives me a lot of reassurance. So I would score this a 4, maybe even a 5, but if I want to be very objective with my scoring system, I'd probably do a 4 since the crack is shallow. But that is, again, a really great placement. So this is a vertical crack placement instead of a horizontal crack placement, which is quite common, especially out west. And this one's really nice because I'm going to be able to place it high before I make a move. So that always feels nice to make, to get a couple little bonus moves in before you get above your pro. So this is a nice big vertical crack that I can get a number 3 in. Oh yeah, that looks really nice. So looking at this placement, you can see again the lobes are super symmetrical. Really good contact, good angle, almost a 90-degree angle on the lobes. The cam is obviously in the direction of the fall. Big cam, deep pocket, deep crack. And that's a really nice piece that I would really trust climbing above. I may want to extend this with an alpine draw so that when I pull my rope up it doesn't do that. Okay, so by extending it with an alpine draw, and then actually fully extending the draw. Now when my rope pulls up, when I'm above it, it does nothing. It stays put, which is exactly what I want. And the only time it's engaged is if I were to fall on it, and that force is going to be straight down. Okay, so that's perfect. One thing we want to touch on is cams walking. So the way the cams are designed is you can push them in easily, but it's very hard to pull them out. Okay, so where that comes into play is if the cam is wiggled back and forth, that those lobes will move inward as it's wiggled, but then as it's wiggled back the other way, they won't come back out. So you can imagine you can have this repetitive wiggling and the cam will kind of walk out. And that'll happen when you don't extend a cam when you should. So you want to think about that when you do have deep cracks so the cam doesn't walk all the way back and you can't get it back. So let's take a look at how that looks specifically. So I got a nice pocket that I'll place this number 2 like that. Okay, but if I don't extend and the rope moves this back and forth, watch what happens. See how it walks back like that? See how it's closing? I might not even get it back. So you want to be careful when you place in deep cracks that you extend properly so the cams don't get pulled back like that. You can see it could have walked all the way back there until it got fully cammed, and I may not have gotten it back. Hey, I hope you found this video useful on placing cams. I know that they're expensive, but this is actually one of the best pieces of equipment you can use for trad climbing. Feel free to leave any comments, and if you like this content, be sure to subscribe to our channel. I'll see you out at the crack.